So let's start with what might be an uncomfortable truth. Most time management advice is really written for employees and not necessarily founders. And it assumes really that you have a fixed job description and someone who is setting your priorities and a very clear line between work and everything else. Now, as founders, we know that none of that really applies, right? You are the strategist, you are the salesperson, you are the firefighter, you're the person who empties the bin, and sometimes all of it before lunch. So, what we're going to be doing over here is we're not going to give ourselves generic productivity tips. What we're going to do is look at why time slips away through the fingers, specifically because you are a founder or a solopreneur or the owner of a small business. And really start reframing time as something that you manage very deliberately, very intentionally, and not something that just happens to you. So the first myth that we are going to need to kill, really, is that working harder, maybe even meaning more hours, well, that solves the time problem. It doesn't. Okay, what it does is it points to, there's basically a point on a curve which says that when an extra hour stops producing extra value, and for most founders, that point arrives faster than they think, especially once decision fatigue begins to set in. And, I've coached plenty of founders who were working 70-hour weeks and they were still behind, not because they weren't putting in the effort, but because the extra hours were going into low value activity. Answer emails at 9 p.m. or redoing work that wasn't delegated properly, or firefighting that was a bit of planning would have prevented. So if working harder was going to fix this, you'd have fixed it already. And then that's why we need a different lever to move forward. Now, it's important that we talk about a distinction that matters more really than any productivity hack that you might come across. And that's the difference between a reactive and a productive day. Now, a reactive day starts with the moment that you open your inbox or your phone, and from that point on, everyone else's priorities really are setting your agenda. Client email, a Slack message, or a fire that needs putting out. Now, a proactive day, on the other hand, really starts before that. It starts with you deciding in advance what actually deserves your attention that day. And it's based on what moves the business forward, right? Most founders really live almost entirely in reactive mode. And it feels productive because you're busy, yes, but busy and effective are not the same thing. And the goal over here is really to shift that balance towards proactive days, even if you can never eliminate reactive time completely. So let's be specific really about what reactive time costs you, because it's not just a vague sense of being busy. It does cost you strategic drift. Weeks can go by, and the big important stuff, the stuff that really actually grows the business, doesn't move. And that's because it's never urgent enough really to force its way into a reactive day. And it costs you. It costs you personally. It's through burnout. And it's because reactive days are genuinely exhausting. And in a way, proactive days that are not. So it costs you and your team because when you're constantly reacting, you're not giving them clear direction. And so they end up floundering. They end up being reactive too. So this isn't just a personal productivity issue. It really is a business risk. So why do generic time management advice, the to-do lists, the color-coded calendars, the eat the frog first type of tips, right? Why does it so often fail founders specifically? Well, because most of it really assumes that someone else has already decided what's important. And your job is really just simply to organize execution. Now, as a founder, deciding what's important is actually your job, right? Nobody hands you the priority list. So before we talk about calendars and to-do lists and all of that kind of stuff, really need to talk about how you actually decide what deserves your time in the first place. And that's really a business decision, right? It's not just a personal habit. And that's the reframe that I want us to take from this particular module. Let's stop thinking about time management as a personal productivity skill. And let's start thinking about it as a business discipline. It's a competency. And it's the same discipline that you'd apply to money. Okay, if you think about your business model canvas, your time is really showing up in two key places. It's the key activities and it's the cost structure. That's the key activity. Literally, this is what you spend your time and your hours doing. That's what we're defining over here. And the cost structure, because every hour that you spend in it is an hour that you're not spending somewhere else. Now, when you audit your time, and we're going to do this in the upcoming modules, then you're not doing a personal well-being exercise. What you are doing is you're doing a resource allocation exercise on your own canvas. And that mental shift alone is going to change how you seriously people are going to start taking this at work. Okay, now this module also sits alongside the two pillars of VISTA. Now, VISTA is another framework, of course, within ScaleUpGym. You may already have seen it. You may be introduced to it in due course. But VISTA is an acronym which you use for velocity, innovation, simplicity, tenacity, and audacity, the VISTA framework. Now, it's got these 5 pillars. You can see them over here. And the pillars of relevance over here are simplicity, which is this one here, the middle one, because most of what we're about to be doing together is really about removing stuff. It's removing tasks. It's removing noise. It's removing the things that feel urgent but don't really matter. And then there's also tenacity. Now, tenacity, because time management is really only worth anything if you stick with it, right? You've got to stick with it past week 1. But then anyone can have a good week. The founders who actually change their trajectory are the ones who are going to keep the system running even in week 12. And that's when the novelty is worn off. So let's keep both of these really words in mind as we're going along. Simplicity and tenacity. Grit, hanging on, understanding. Because they'll come back at the end of the course as well. So, to recap, working harder isn't the answer. Reactive days are really quietly super expensive. And generic advice is failing because it assumes that someone else is setting your priorities. So from here on in, what we're going to do is we're going to treat time the way we treat any other scarce resource on your business model canvas. So the obvious next question is, where is your time actually going right now? Not where you think it's going, but where's it really going? And that's exactly what we're going to find out in Module 2 with a proper time audit.